Hi readers, Mrs. Malstadt here again. Thanks for joining me. Today I have another Aesop fable to share with you. We've been reading The Fox and the Crow this week and thinking about the theme and the lessons that we've learned and thinking about what we know about the characters' relationships in that Aesop fable. And today I have a new Aesop fable called The Dog and His Bone to share with you. And this particular version of the Aesop fable that was recorded into a book was illustrated by Jerry Pinkney. And Jerry Pinkney is a multiple award-winning illustrator and author of books for children. His paintings have been shown in art galleries, and he has been a college professor of art. He says that creating books gives me a great feeling of personal and artistic satisfaction. When I'm working on a book, I wish the phone would never ring. I love doing it. My satisfaction comes from the actual marks on the paper, and when it sings, it's magic. So he has illustrated this particular fable, and I'm noticing just so much details in his illustration there. It's beautiful. So before we read The Dog and His Bone, I want to remind you about thinking about theme, which is the message or the lesson that we learn from reading a story. But I also want to talk a little bit about plot, and that's what happens in a story. So sometimes it can be tricky and we mix up plot and theme. So as we read The Dog and the Bone today, I want you to be thinking about the plot. Be thinking about the characters, any big events that happen, the problem, the solution. And sometimes when we tell plot, it's like we're retelling the story, almost like you've seen perhaps a story mountain before, and we might use words like first, next, then, suddenly, and last. It's like a retelling of the story. But then when we think about theme, we want to think, what's the story really about? What's that message behind the actions of the characters? And we also want to think, what does the author leave us thinking about? So those are two ideas to kind of keep in the back of your mind as we read The Dog and His Bone. So just by looking at this illustration that we looked at a minute ago, I'm noticing that there is a dog, and it looks like he has a bone in his mouth, just like the title. And then it looks like maybe he's standing on a dock, which is like a platform over water, or maybe it's a bridge even. And he's looking over, and I think that that's water, and I think that that's his reflection. Readers, have you ever been able to see your reflection in water before, like maybe in a pool? So I'm wondering what the dog is doing looking at his reflection here. So let's read. The Dog and His Bone, an Aesop fable, retold by Jerry Pinkney. A dog carrying a bone looked over the edge of the bridge and saw his own reflection in the water below. Look at that dog, he thought. Why, the bone he's carrying looks much bigger than mine, juicier too, and full of meat. If only I could have that bone as well. If I bark as loud as I can, maybe that will scare him into dropping his bone and running away. Okay, readers, so I've confirmed my prediction that he was indeed looking into the water and seeing his reflection, but does the dog know that? He doesn't. He's saying he thinks it's another dog with a bone that looks much bigger and juicier, and then he's saying that he wants to bark. Readers, do you know what I'm thinking about? I'm connecting to The Fox and the Crow, and I'm thinking about how the crow decided to sing, and then the crow dropped the cheese, and now I'm wondering, is the same thing going to happen to dog? What do you guys think? Let's see. But as he opened his mouth to bark, his own bone fell with a splash into the river, leaving the foolish dog with nothing at all. Moral, don't give up what's real for what isn't. Well, sounds like the dog maybe learned a lesson. So let's think. What happened in The Dog and the Bone? Okay, so there was a dog, and he saw his reflection in the bridge. He wanted what he thought was a bigger, juicier bone from another dog. And so then next, he decided to bark at the dog, hoping to scare him. But then last, the bone fell out of his own mouth, falling into the water. So that's what happened. So now let's think about the theme. What's that story really about? What is the author trying to teach us or leave us thinking about? What could we learn from the dog's actions? So I'm thinking about how when the dog saw the other, what he thought was the other dog, he wasn't really happy with what he had himself. He wanted what somebody else had. Maybe he felt a little bit jealous. And so a couple of things I'm thinking for the theme is maybe one idea is if you are greedy, you may lose everything. Which kind of also makes me think of another big idea that would really go across lots of lessons to learn. Really, it's not just a lesson for this book, but it's a lesson that anybody could use, is thinking about maybe being happy or thankful for what you have. So readers, as you go on to your reading today, I want you to think about how you might determine the difference between the plot, what happened, and the theme, that lesson that we can learn. And when we want to figure out a theme in a story, we can stop and jot notes about what's happening, and then we can infer the theme by thinking about the characters and their actions and the big events. So as you go off to read today in your independent books, I invite you to give that a try. Happy reading!